Hello, happy new year, and welcome to 2022 and our first edition of Tech Tuesday with me, David from OM Digital Solutions. I hope you're all very well, and I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and New Year, or whatever holidays you've been celebrating, and I hope they've all been very nice, and I hope you're all healthy as well, because obviously we're still, in the middle of a lot of things going on in terms of our health. So I hope you're all healthy, and thanks for joining me as well. This is a slightly earlier than usual Tech Tuesday. Here in the UK, it's about 1:30. So wherever you are in the world, I hope it's a reasonable time for you to join me. But today, I'm hoping to talk to you a little bit about custom modes on your OMD cameras. A little bit about what goes into the custom modes, how you can adapt to those custom modes. And it's all about kind of planning for the future, planning ahead in terms of going out and using your camera, and going on shoots and making sure that your equipment is all programmed correctly. And that's kind of our theme moving forward, really. It's about, planning ahead and looking towards the future. Now, as usual, this is Tech Tuesday, so you can put any questions that you might have into the comments that I've got just to my side here. And I will try and say hello to as many people as possible. If you're in there, give me a wave, let me know who you are and where you're from, and I'll try and give you a shout out as well. But comments and questions not related to custom modes are very, very welcome. But let's keep it nice and friendly as we always do. We've got a wonderful global community. I can see some of you popping in there just now. We've got Terry in the UK, Steve, Patricia, Les, Mayland over in Perth in Western Australia. Always good to see you in Mayland. Steve in from Michigan in the USA. We've got Kumar from Kerala in India. Stephen Morris, David Watson, Cameron, many, many more. Too many to shout out, but I will keep trying as I go through. So, as I said, today's Tech Tuesday is going to be about custom modes. And today I'm going to be using an EM1 Mark III, but also I'm going to show you a few things on the EM5 Mark III as well when it comes to custom modes. Now, I wanted to talk to you about what custom modes are there for, and also what items within your camera get locked into a custom mode when you assign them as well, because people sometimes come to me and say, I've got this custom mode set up and I'm pretty sure I had that function on it and it's not working. And it's usually because things weren't perhaps done in the right sequence before they were assigned in, but we're hopefully going to go over some of those things just so that you can kind of get a clear idea of what it's for. So many of you in at the moment. We've got over 140 people watching live. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and watch this very first Tech Tuesday of 2022. And don't worry, if you can't hang around, then this, of course, will be forever on YouTube and Facebook, so you can always come back in later on and have a little look and see what you missed. So let's talk about custom modes. And I'm just going to switch my camera on here, and I'm going to move over to this kind of little split view just on here, and my camera should boot up any second. Now, there it is. Fantastic stuff. We are live. Things can go wrong. Hopefully it won't do for the first one of the session. Now, the first things that I wanted to talk about are certain items within your menus that will get locked into a custom mode, and the ones that quite often people forget about. So when you switch between custom modes, you might think, well, hang on a minute, why is this working and why is that not working? It's perhaps because they've not all been assigned when you initially went in there. So one of the first items that I want to show you, if I pull up the menu on my camera here, is that if we go down into the custom menu, which is where most of the settings that you'll create will be based, and I'm just going to get rid of this little blurb that's popped up. You can see this blurb, this box that pops up here. It says detailed camera options, and it's kind of an information box. And as you go through, that information box tells you what some of the features are there to do, but it can get in the way, it can block your view. So if you see that and you want to get rid of it, just press the info button on your camera and that will take that away. So one of the first things that I like to show people when we're talking about custom modes is the reset lens option. Okay, so in the A menu, and you're going to go into A4, right down at the bottom, you'll have the reset lens option. Now, what this option is actually going to do for you is it's going to keep the lens's focal point where it was when you switched the camera off. So if you've autofocused or manually focused at a specific point in the distance, and then you switch your camera off or the camera goes to sleep, by default, when it wakes back up, the focus point is reset. So it's not where you left it before it went to sleep. And if you keep the reset lens option to off, then it will be still there when you come back. So this is really great if you're using things like the AF limiter and you've set a specific focal distance to work with in terms of what you want in focus, because it means that you can allow your camera to go into sleep mode and then quite happily just wake it up with a little push of the shutter button, and the focus will be exactly where you left it. So that's a really, really good one to add into your custom modes, particularly when it comes to things like wildlife and sports and things like that. So that's my main one that I usually talk to people about, because it's one that people can find quite frustrating if the focus isn't where they left it. Now, of course, one of the more obvious things that comes into play when we're talking about custom modes is button functions, because custom modes is one way of customizing your camera, but assigning buttons to do certain jobs the way you want them to is the ultimate way to customize your camera. So again, you'll be in the cog custom menu and down into either the B or B1 option, depending on what model you've got. And then you've got your button function option at the top there. Now in here, if you're lucky enough to have an EM1 Mark III or an EM1X or an EM5 Mark III, you'll have this lovely graphic that shows you as you go through, moving through the buttons, which buttons are where and what function they're doing. So it's the button on the left-hand side and the function on the right-hand side within that box. As we can see here with the record button, this is my favorite button to reassign to different things, because I have one camera set up for video and I have one set up for stills. So the one that I've got set up for stills, generally speaking, I'll repurpose the video record button, the big red button on the top, into something else, because it's much more useful on my stills camera. And go in there and you'll have an absolute plethora of features and options to choose from, depending on what you want to assign to that button. Now, one of the key ones that I will do usually is going to be bracketing. So we've got BKT, and this refers quite heavily to when I'm shooting macro. And I like a nice on-off switch for my focus bracketing to come on and go off, so that I can jump between single macro shots and bracketed shots. So that's a really, really good one to add into a macro custom mode if you're going to build that in there. It just gives you nice quick access to the bracketing mode, rather than having to go into the menu and doing 3 or 4 steps to switch it on and off every time. So that's super, super useful. Now, all of these button functions are obviously going to be very personal to you. So we can give you some ideas on how to build those, such as using bracketing in the macro modes. But what you want to do is really assess what kind of photography you're doing in terms of what you want to add into those custom modes. Now, of course, different cameras have got different amounts of custom modes. If I just go ahead and show you the top of my EM1 Mark III just here, you'll see that I have C1, 2, C3, and C4, the same amount of custom modes as an EM1X. Now, you may only have 3 custom modes if you have an EM1 Mark II. You may have 1 custom mode on the dial if you've got an EM5 Mark III, which is something that I'll come on to later. And of course, if you've got a slightly older model, you may still be working with what we call my sets. And my sets are exactly the same as custom modes, with one difference in the fact that the my set models, the older models, things like EM1 Mark I, EM5 Mark II, EM10 Mark II, they didn't have a point on that top dial to quickly switch to. So you had my sets built into the system, and you can assign a button to activate a my set, but you didn't have a mode dial on the top. So you've either got 4, 3, or 1 mode dial on top of the camera, depending on which model you've got, or you've got my sets in the deeper menus. Let's go back over and have a quick look at some other things that we can add into our custom modes, and things that are held by custom modes. Because realistically, what I want to say is absolutely everything is held by custom modes. Any changes you make in this deep menu, in the super control panel, everything is kind of locked in and staying there. One of the other ones is the drive mode and picture mode availability. Now, that's not the selection of drive mode. That's not whether or not you've chosen a single or a sequential drive, or whether or not you're shooting in natural or monotone, but it's actually the availability of those drives within your super control panel. Now, what I mean by that is if I go and press OK from a live view to bring up my super control panel and head down to the tile that offers me my drive mode options, within there, I've got tons and tons of availability. I've got single silent, high-speed mechanical, high-speed silent, pro capture, so on, all the way through into my timer options and into my high-res mode. But everybody uses their camera differently, and you may not want all of those options. And to have all of those options available to you actually takes time to skip through and select when you want it. So you might want to narrow that down. And that's what you can assign into a custom mode. So if we head into the custom menu, into the cogs, and then go down into our display options. So you've got D1, or D options are for display, things that you see. And then we've got this drive/timer settings option, which is the fourth option down. And again, if you're using different models, there can be slightly different positions, but they'll be there or thereabouts on the same pages. If we look into here, you get all of the drive options that are available to you with either a tick or no tick in the box next to them. If there's a tick there, it means that when you're in your super control panel, when you're running around shooting live, that option is available to you. And if it's not ticked, then the option is just not available. So let's say I wanted to narrow things right down and I wanted to make sure that the single drive mode is always available. I only want to have access to a high-speed silent, a high-speed pro capture, a low-speed silent, a low-speed pro capture. I'm not interested in any custom timer modes. But I am interested in keeping my high-res mode in there, so I'll keep that ticked. And again, this is something that if you find that your high-res mode isn't there, this is the first place you should be looking as well. So once we've done all that, I can literally half press my shutter button to come out of the menu into my live view, press OK for the super control panel, go to the tile that shows me my drive options, and now I've slimmed that down to a nice, easy 6 options to choose from. I can see them all. They're all there, nice and available, and I can pick between the ones that I use on a regular basis. And again, if you are perhaps shooting wildlife, you might set a custom mode up, say C1, 2, 3, or 4, and only show availability for pro capture, low and low speed silent, because they may be the only options that you want to use in your wildlife photography, and it makes it much simpler and easier to see. Now, before I go on, I'm going to go into the comments and just say hi to a few people. Let's see, because this is a social affair as well. We're here for the education, but we're also here for the community. So let's see who we've got in there. We've got Paul from Dorset. Hello, Paul. Good to have you in. We've got Pete in from Wiltshire in the UK as well. Let's see. We've also got Monica in from Florida. Lovely. Darren's in. Happy New Year, Darren. Good to see you in as usual. Susan from Connecticut in the USA as well. Thank you very much for joining. Now, let's see if we've got any technical questions so far. So the first one here, obviously from Steve. Yes, custom modes are available in the EM1 Mark II. So you have 3 C options, custom 1, 2, and 3 on the top dial that you can program and assign whatever you like to, and then just have quick access to those top dials on there as well. Let's just close that one down. Let's see who else we've got. Jim. Hello, Jim from Kansas. Sitting watching this while the sunrise is on fire. I am so jealous. That sounds incredible. What the best thing for you to do right now would be to take some amazing pictures, upload them onto your social media and tag us, and then we can see them all as well. Enjoy the sunrise, Jim. Okay, so we've also got our back of house elves running Olympus UK and Get Olympus. They're all around as well, dropping in little tips and hints in the comments and links. And our fantastic Olympus UK, Charlotte has put in a link for the one-to-one sessions. For those of you that are in the UK, you can get one-to-one virtual sessions through that link, and you can have some time to discuss specifically the things that interest you the most, or if you're having any problems or challenges, we can help you sort them out as well. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick scan through and make sure we're happy. There's no more questions, just lots and lots of hellos. So hello to everybody that I've not been able to say hello to directly. Denny's just put in the bottom there, that's just literally popped up on my screen, HDR question mark. Yeah, absolutely. You can program, you can have HDR on in the camera with all of your preferred settings, whether that be in-camera HDR 1 and 2, or whether that's auto exposure bracketing across a series of frames, and you can set that to a custom mode as well. It is absolutely everything. Sarah has asked a question here saying, since you only have an EM5 Mark II, are my only custom choices in the menu since I don't have custom choice on the top dial? Well, not exactly, Sarah, no. So what you do have in your EM5 Mark II are something called My Sets. And My Sets are basically custom modes, but they're the previous version of custom modes before we placed an option to get to them on the top dial. So the My Set availability, you would set up your camera and lock it into a My Set rather than locking into a custom mode. And then you would assign a button to switch the My Set on and off. So that's how you can do that. And if you want a more detailed way of doing it on your EM5 Mark II, then get in touch with us. I'm not sure whereabouts globally you are. If you're in the UK, obviously we have the virtual one-to-ones. If you're not, we can try and sort something out for you. Just get in touch and we'll do our very best to help you out on your EM5 Mark II. Okay, excellent stuff. So more questions and comments coming up. Let's go back over to the camera feed and see what else we can add in to our custom modes. So display options are a big one for me. So when I'm shooting, particularly macro in sort of darker areas, if it's fungi and things like that, they might be in really low light. And as you can see on the screen here, my single AF point that's in the middle, you can just about see those 4 little corners that are in light gray. And if they're on a fairly dark background, it can be quite difficult to see where my focus point is. So I like to change the color of that and any grid that I've got existing on the screen as well. And this is one of my favorite ones to add into a custom mode. I usually add it into my macro custom mode. And the way that we do that is we head into the menu. We go to the custom menu, which is the cog icon or the gear. And we go back into our D section. D is for display, everything that we see. And we want to look at D3 and grid settings. So despite the fact that the AF point isn't a grid, the color options for it come under the grid settings. So if we go into grid settings, we have 3 options: display color, display grid, and apply settings to EVF. Now, of course, you probably going to want to apply those settings to the EVF. So we generally have that on. Now, display grid is where we get to choose whether or not we want an overlay grid over the top. And there are a few options. So just on this occasion, I'm going to select the rule of thirds, which is a nice, easy one to have on there. And now we're going to choose what color it is. So if we go to the display color option and press right, we've got 2 presets that we can control. And press right again on preset 1, and we get the RGB channels that we can alter. So you can pretty much make any color because you've got access to RG and B, red, green, and blue. Build any color you like, and then you've got your kind of gamma, the strength of the translucency at the end there, which I usually leave at 75% anyway. But if you don't want it quite so much in your face, then you can bring it down to 60%, and it'll just be faintly over your image. Now, one of my favorite ones to do with macro is red, because red is a great color when you're doing things like fungus. There's not many funguses that are red, so you can technically get away with it. Funguses, fungi. Fungi is the correct plural, I think. Probably is. So I'm going to reduce my my R value all the way down to 0 and then go one more click and it hits 255. If I wanted to as well, I could raise my blue value and I could give myself a nice kind of mauvey purpley look to it if I wanted to. It's entirely up to you. You can make any color from here. But once you're happy with that color, press OK. And then press OK again on preset 1. Now when we return to a live view, a little half press on the shutter button, we can see there that I've got this overlaid thirds grid. And I've also got my kind of purpley looking AF point. Now, if I was to change my AF point to a slightly bigger grid, let's say a 9-point grid, then I'll still see the corner points of that 9-point grid as well. So it's really nice and helpful to separate those. And again, those can get completely locked in to a custom mode as well. Yes, we've got a comment up here from, I'm going to say it, from one old git. It says, Fly Agaric. Yeah, Fly Agaric, you're red. They are very red, the kind of the fairy tale mushrooms, you're right. One of a few, though, I think. There are a couple more. And in this one, I think there is a fungi called an amethyst something or other. I'm not that up to speed on my fungi, but again, the purple wouldn't be very good for that one. So there we go. But yes, good point, Fly Agaric. So that's my color version. So that's one of the main things that I would put into my display options. The other thing that you need to think about is your metering as well. So in different genres, you're going to meter differently. So if you're set on evaluative metering for some street photography or something like that, then perhaps if you're going to shoot wildlife, you might want to come down to a center weighted, or if you're going to shoot street portraiture, you might be coming down to a spot metering to show the difference. Now, what we'll probably do is I'm just going to take off my lens cap now just to show you the difference between these and what a massive difference it will make. So let's take our shot on evaluative. So ultimately at the moment, what I've got sitting here is I've got my ISO set to auto just randomly because, believe it or not, in the studio rooms without the lights directly on something, it's quite low light in here. So I'm just going to reduce this down to a 60th of a second. And at a 60th of a second at f2.8, using evaluative metering on this whole scene, my auto ISO wants to use 3200, and we can take that shot quite nicely just there. Oops, we can't take that shot. We're in Pro Capture. Let's put it back into a single drive. That would help. and then take that shot. So 3200 ISO gives me my evaluative metering. If I was to then decide, actually, I'm going to change this because we're going to be doing something that's more wildlifey or specific central area, I'm going to put center weighted on. Now center weighting, which is where this EM5 camera is in the middle of the frame, because it's such a dark object, my ISO has now shot up a little bit. It's gone up to ISO 5000 because it's center weighted all of its metering capabilities around that part of the frame. If I was to then change it again and go to spot metering, which is something that I would use for street portraiture, particularly, well, any portraiture really, to try and get a nice balance of tone and exposure from the skin, then this, believe it or not, is actually linked to your AF points. If I reduce down to a single AF point and I move this around, you'll see as I move across lighter and darker areas of the image, my exposure changes as it goes. But as a result, if I wanted to take a nice low-key image of this camera here, it's also affected my ISO. So I'm now taking a low-key image of this camera and my ISO is at 640 as opposed to 3200 or even 5000. So it's really important to use that metering correctly in the genre and then lock that into your custom modes as well. Super, super important. Okay, let's go back into the menu and have a look at a couple of other things that we can change in our custom modes. One thing that I should have probably mentioned right at the start is that custom modes are locked into priority modes. Okay, so if I show you the top of my camera again, here, depending on what priority mode I'm in on the top here, this is the mode that is locked into your custom settings. Okay, so we're specifically talking about EM1 series cameras now. If I set up in manual, or if I set up in shutter priority or aperture or program, then that priority mode is locked in to the custom mode when I save it. And once I've saved it into that custom mode, I can't change the priority mode. I have to build a whole new custom mode based on a different priority mode. So let's say, for example, I'm going to do it now just so that you know the actual procedure. I'm going to set up in manual. And then in manual mode, I'm literally just going to hold everything that I've put in there right now. Sorry, my cable just popped out just slightly. I'm going to hold everything in there, put my AF point in the center with my new display options. And I'm going to lock all that in now. I'm going to assign all this into C1. So it's going to assign the metering. It's going to assign the drive mode. It's going to assign the file format. So make sure if you shoot RAW, make sure you change this to RAW. That's super, super important. Everything on your super control panel, everything in your menu, these are really, really key items. Once you're happy that you've made every change that you want, and it can take a little while to get it absolutely spot on. I mean, I do recommend sitting down in your favorite comfy chair with your favorite beverage and taking some time over this and really kind of pushing through all of the different menus and settings and options and deciding what's right for each one. Once you've got there, then you can hit the menu key. You can go ahead and find shooting menu number 1 on that extreme left bar. Go to the reset custom modes. If you're working, I think it was Susan earlier, had an EM5 Mark II, this will say reset/my sets. And in here, you're going to go to assign to custom mode, which is the second option down. Then you're going to go across and you've got 3 or 4 options, depending on what model you've got. You press right until you see the word set in between an up arrow and a down arrow. And then you just simply press OK. That's all now locked in to C1 on our top dial. So effectively now, if I go back, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit my menus and just very quickly go into my display options because it's the easiest way to see a difference. I'm going to go into D3, into my grid settings, and I'm going to refresh this, take this back to there or thereabouts where it was before so that we're not seeing this kind of mauvey purple grid. And then hopefully we'll be able to see a difference when I switch these over. So let's just pick that one. It's relatively grey. So now I'm back to what would be considered a fairly normal grid screen, very grey, very light grey. If I now shift to C1 on my top dial, there we go, I'm in C1. We can see there's an M next to it in the bottom left corner, and I've got that kind of purple grid up, and it's held everything that I wanted. Now, here's the big thing that you need to pay attention to. I'm in C1. I'm running at a 60th of a second at f2.8 because that was the exposure settings when I assigned it, okay? I'm now going to change this to 1600th of a second shutter speed because I have to. Something's going on that I need that shutter speed for. I'm going to take my shot and then I'm going to leave my custom mode and I'm going to go back to it. Where's my 1600th of a second gone? Well, it's gone. It's been refreshed. It's gone back to what it originally was when I assigned the custom mode, which was 1/60th of a second. And that will be true on every single model except for the EM1 Mark III. Because in the EM1 Mark III, we actually have an option to stop that from happening. So when you're assigning your custom modes in shooting menu number 1, you go to reset custom modes, you've done your assign to custom mode. You can then choose whether or not leaving the custom mode and going back remembers any changes that you make whilst in it, or forgets them and goes back to its default original C1 setting that you put in there. And that's in the custom mode save settings on the EM1 Mark III. And at the moment, only on the EM1 Mark III. In here, you'll have a choice, an individual choice for each one, C1, 2, 3, and 4. Reset means that if you go in, make the change like we just did, come out and go back in again, then the change won't be held. But you can choose hold, which will hold any changes you make in that C mode whilst you make them. Okay, so it's really important that you know which one has hold or reset on, and indeed whether or not you actually want to use the hold or not. But it's definitely the information that you need to be armed with. So hold is really important. And again, like I said, this is an EM1 Mark III function. Now, once you've assigned all those, obviously you've got C1, C2, C3, C4. At this stage, there is no way to name these profiles. Okay, so you need to make sure that you make a note of the style of settings that you've applied in there. So for example, just to make a little note somewhere, C1 macro settings, C2 birds in flight, C3 street portraiture black and white, something like that. And then you've got a nice easy way to remember it. Now, of course, you can save these through Olympus Workspace software, and also on the EM1 Mark III, you can save them through the OI Share app as well. So if you did have to go and make any changes, any resets to your camera, then I definitely recommend on all of the models, with the exception of the EM5 Mark III, pop it through Olympus Workspace and go to the save profile feature and save all those before you make any changes. And you can also do that through the OI Share app. And we've got some videos already online that show the OI Share app doing that exact thing. So make sure you check back and have a look at those. Okay, so I'm going to have a quick look. Let's have a see what's going on in the comments. Sorry, it was Sarah that had an EM5 Mark II, not Susan. I do apologize, Sarah. It was you that had the EM5 Mark II, and you'll be looking for my sets in shooting menu number 1. Okay, let's see what else we've got. So Deborah's asked, and this is a great thing about our community as well, because there are a couple of people that have asked questions in here, and they've had answers from other community members. That's fantastic. Deborah was asking about how to quickly access the histogram, and Darren came back and said that you need to press the info button a couple of times. That's right, and I'll show you I'll show you the way to get into the info menu to make sure that happens as well. And Darren has also come back with the name of the other purple fungi that I was talking about, which is an amethyst deceiver. Yes, it was on the tip of my tongue, Darren. I'm ashamed, more so that I didn't say it for you. The macroverse, fantastic. Thanks for coming in. Macroverse uses red as well, exactly, and particularly macro. It's an absolutely fantastic color to use for those kind of things. So let's see, we've got Raphael in Russia. Raphael has high res mode selected in the custom modes, but it doesn't appear in the super control panel. What could be wrong? So ultimately, with the high res modes, you have to have it switched on. And this is something that I hear all the time. So what I'll do is I'll just go over to my feed, and we'll come out of there. There are two reasons why high res mode may not be appearing in your super control panel. And when I say appearing in your super control panel, I mean when you press OK and you go to the drive mode options, and then right at the end is this little icon that is the high res mode. If that's not there, and remember this is a slimmed down version of the drive modes that we've built, so you might have to go a little bit further on to see it. But if that's not there, then the chances are it's because it's been switched off somewhere. The first place that I would check, Raphael, is in shooting menu number 2 and into the high res shot option. And that first option at the top where it says high res shot, the corresponding action for it must say 0 seconds, okay? Because a lot of people think that this is just a delay that you can switch off and it doesn't affect the high res mode. But if it says off here, it won't appear in the drive modes in your super control panel, Raphael. So try that one first. That absolutely must be set to on. Really, really important. Now, whilst we're in here, one of the custom mode setups I wanted to go through with you was using high resolution mode, but particularly with flash. So we've obviously already covered the fact that that must be on at least 0 seconds to work. 0 seconds just means there's no delay, but it's on. Now, you can actually put a delay onto it if you want to put a delay onto it all the way up to, I think, about a minute or so. But if you select 0 seconds, then it's going to have no delay, but it will be active. Now, the second option down is the flash charge time. So if you're using an Olympus flash on camera, you don't need to worry about that. But if you're using a third-party flash, you will need to select that and select a delay for your third-party flash to recycle power. And of course, if you've got an EM1 Mark III or an EM1X, you can choose the shooting method, whether or not it's handheld or tripod based. Now, the reason why my charge time for flash is grayed out there is because you can't use flash with handheld high res. So if we change that to tripod based, you'll see there that now you can use flash with that. So we're talking about setting up for flash. So we have to be in tripod mode with high res to use flash. We're having a 0 second charge time with that because I'm setting this up as though I was going to use my FL700WR flash, which is an Olympus flash and doesn't need any delays. 0 seconds, 0 seconds, tripod. Now, in order for the flash to fire, I need to tell the camera to release the flash in silent mode because high res is a silent mode, very much like bracketing and other things like that. So for those modes to release the flash, we need to choose, excuse me, the anti-shock and silent mode settings in shooting menu number 2. Excuse me, I've got quite a frog in my throat today. I have to cover my microphone when I do that, otherwise you'll all get deaf whilst I cough into it. So we're in shooting menu number 2. We're going to enable the flash use in silent mode settings. So go to anti-shock and silent mode, go down to silent mode settings, and go down to the flash mode, which will be by default saying not allow because silent mode is intended to be discrete, and obviously flash wouldn't be very discrete if it was firing. And then just select allow. That's now going to let the flash go off in focus bracketing, focus stacking, and high res modes, and any of the silent modes in the drive mode, so single silent, burst silent, things like that. So you can use multi-shot flash with a silent burst. You can't use flash with Pro Capture. That's kind of the physics of Pro Capture because it's a time machine running a buffer. You can't do that, but every other silent mode you can. So once you've allowed flash in there and you've made sure that your high res shot says 0 seconds, then you can go ahead and select your high res shot from the menu, save it to a custom mode, use it as you wish, and that's all set up for you nice and easy. So hopefully, Raphael, that answers your question on why high res isn't there. If you're still struggling, reach out to us and we'll try and have a little bit of a closer look at your setup and see what's going on. But I'm pretty sure that that's probably one of the reasons why it's not there. The other reason why it might not be there is something that we discussed slightly earlier. And that would be because it's not in the display settings. So in the cog modes and down into your D1 option and into your drive modes and timer settings, and make sure that down at the bottom here, all the way down, that your high res option is ticked so that it shows up in there. But remember, you need to be back in your custom mode to make those changes, because once you've made those changes, you need to then say, right, I'm in my custom mode. I can now see my high res. You need to then save those on top of whatever you've saved. So you need to come out of that into shooting menu number 1, into reset custom modes, to the custom mode that you had that already saved in. It will already say set. Just press right. When you see the word set again, just press OK. And that will just overwrite the changes that you've made on top of all the rest. It won't take anything else away. OK, so must remember to do that. OK, let's have a quick look at what's going on in the comments. So Jan has asked, is there a possibility to shoot RAW only without any JPEG files being generated simultaneously when using the high resolution mode? Well, it depends on what mode, on what camera you've got, but you should be able to select RAW only, particularly on the EM1 Mark III and EM1X. So let's bring up the, oh, we don't want that one, we want that one. So let's have a look in our super control panel. Yes, we've got 80 million pixel fine plus raw. Oh no, I see what you're saying, Jan. You wanna just get the raws only. So no, you can't do that, sadly. Your options at the moment are 80 million pixel raw, JPEG, 50 million JPEG, 25 million JPEG, or those JPEGs plus the raw files. You're not going to get the singular raw on its own at the moment. I was completely confusing myself there. Sorry about that, Jan. Okay, let's have a little look at this one. Interesting. Okay, so let's bring Mark's question up. Let me take that view away because it's a bit messy. Mark's asking, when in A mode, so when in aperture mode, and you have a single focus point, then switch to video mode and change to all focus point modes and switch back to A, the number of focus points stays the same. Can I lock in different settings for different modes? Yes, but the only way you can do that is to set up a custom mode as a video mode, Mark. So you'll need to create a video mode and then save that as a custom 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then that will retain the differences between those. Sadly, the focal point is remembered through modes, as is the exposure compensation as well. Which I'll come on to in a second. So build yourself a video custom mode that has your preferred focal points, sort of continual autofocus, all points, face detect, etc., and save that to a custom mode. Speaking of which, though, really, really important to remember that when you are building these custom modes, that exposure compensation follows through from different modes. So let's say, for example, we were in aperture priority, where we can have, let's go extremes, +3 exposure compensation, okay? If I now shuffle myself over to manual mode, you'll see there that the +3 exposure compensation has been held, and that's having an impact on the ISO performance because I've set the shutter speed and I've set the aperture, but the camera thinks I'm telling it to still have a +3 exposure compensation, and therefore it will have an effect on auto ISO. If you haven't got auto ISO set in this mode, if you've locked that down to a specific ISO, then that +3 is not going to make a difference, but it will be remembered. So you must check that when you're setting up your custom modes, and if need be, go back to your to any of the priority modes, shutter or aperture or program, and reduce that exposure compensation back down to 0 or whatever level you want it at, so that when you go back into a more manual mode, it's not active and it's not in effect. Okay, so we've got a little bit more time left, so I'll have a quick look at some of the other comments as well. Let's see. Malin's asked a question: will the reset hold be available in future EM1X firmware changes? It's very difficult to say. Obviously, looking towards the future, we are obviously making some fantastic ideas and bringing those forward. We've already brought some fantastic products in this year. In terms of firmware updates and changes, we really don't know until they arrive. So you've all got to just kind of hold on, keep your fingers crossed, and as soon as we have any information in terms of firmware updates and changes to the system, we will let you know. And I know, Malin, you are particularly keen. So as soon as we find out, we'll let you all know. We've got Oyan from Sweden. Hello. Good. No, don't worry about being late. You can always come back and check later on and see the start of the video later on. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got Jason. Jason's looking to get into photography, but looking for a first-time camera to use. Well, that's a really good question. In terms of the OMD system, then the first time, the sort of entry-level camera that we suggest is an EM10. We're on EM10 Mark IV at the moment. So that would be a nice entry-level one for you to get into. And that won't hold you back because the EM10 will allow you to go full manual in terms of controlling all aspects of your photography. It just won't have some of the more professional features that the EM5 and the EM1 range uses. And there are some really nice kits available for the EM10 Mark IV as well. And that's what I recommend. You can get that in the traditional kind of black and silver, the kind of legacy look, or the kind of sleek black as well. So look out for an EM10. And if you do get yourself a new camera, then come to us and we'll help you start to discover it and understand it a little bit better as well. Okay, so I've got a couple more things that I wanted to just touch on for you. I'm just having a quick skim through through my comments just to see if there's anybody that had any really kind of burning questions, but everyone seems to be enjoying so far. So thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let's see. Raphael's come back to my question, my answer to high res. Raphael asked, was that in menu 2? You do not have 0 second, but you have a quarter. So I'm going to pop your question up here, Raphael. Yes. So let me show you again, just so that you know what you're doing. Let's put the feed on. So you will have 1/8 of a second in shooting menu number 2 and high res shot. You will have in here, it says 1/8 of a second. Now that is simply a 1/8 of a second delay, which means that when you press the shutter, 1/8 of a second of time will pass before the shot fires. And ideally, if you don't want a delay, that needs to be set to 0. And that was one of the two places where it could have been hidden from your view. So hopefully that has solved it for you. Okay. So let's have a quick look. That's a great question we got from Philip Hadley. When I set high res mode and look at the rear screen, the high res symbol is flashing. Is this normal? Yes, it's perfectly normal. And what that means is that the camera is moving too much to take a high res shot efficiently. So if it's flashing away, let me see if I can show you this on my feed here. So we've got a high res shot. Yeah. So as you can see, the high res shot there, I'm shaking the camera visit. If we can bring this up here, I'm shaking it like this. And you can see on the right hand side that my high res shot icon is flashing. That means the camera is moving too much. So if I stop moving it, it steadies down. So if it's not flashing, it means it can take a high res shot. And if it is flashing, it simply means trying to get it to flash now is actually pretty much a difficult thing to do. There we go. And if it is flashing, it means it can't take a reasonable shot. So that's all that means, Phil. But that's an absolutely great question. Who we've got in here? Calvin from, I think I'm saying that right, Sebago Lake in Maine. Thanks for joining us. Let's have a quick look at this question just here. Let's clear the screen so we can see it a bit better. Derek Barkham. Hello, Derek. Thanks for joining. Can I set up my tracing info position? Can I set up so my tracing info position is stored in my raw files? At the moment, it only appears in the JPEG. When you say tracing information, do you mean tracking or AF points? Just clarify that for me, and hopefully I'll be able to answer before the end of the session, Derek, and clarify whether it's a tracking information or AF focus information. Thank you. Okay, what's the next one we've got here is Sarah. Sarah's asked, in custom menu, custom setting D, how should I have the multifunction buttons checked and what does this mean? That's a really, really great question. Let's go into the menu and have a little look at that. Multifunction menu. If we go down to the cogs and into custom mode D, then you have your multifunction settings here. Now, multifunction settings refer to an assigned multifunction button. And in here, you'll see various things are ticked: color creator, magnify, image aspect. That's, you know, whether you're shooting 4:3, 16:9, etc. Simulated optical viewfinder. That's a great one for shooting backlit subjects or peaking and things like that. Now, when they're ticked, that means that when you press and hold the assigned multifunction button, all of these options will pop up on the bottom, and you can click the dial across them to select the one that you want, and then release the multifunction button. And then the next press, a single press, not a hold, will activate that chosen feature or operation, basically. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to come out of here. I'll go into the B1 button function. I will make my record button the multifunction button on this camera. So I skim through very quickly. There we go, multifunction. So now my multifunction button is on the record button. I'm going to press and hold the record button and twist the rear dial on my camera with my thumb. And then all of my multifunction options pop up, and I'm clicking through those with the rear dial. So I can go ahead and select color creator, and then I release my multifunction button, which was the record button. And then I just tap it one time, color creator comes up, tap it again, color creator goes away. Press and hold it and turn the dial, and I can pick another multifunction option. Okay. And that's basically how that one works, Sarah. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the session. We've been in nearly 45 minutes, and I hope it's been useful in terms of custom modes and what gets saved into there. Remember, the most important thing is that when you build your custom mode, everything you have set will be saved in there. Anything that you haven't set will not be saved in there, and it all goes through shooting menu number 2. Shooting menu number 1, reset custom modes, assign to custom mode, pick the one you want, press right when you see the word set, press OK, and that keeps it nice and simple. If you think you've assigned something in your custom mode and it's not there, go into your custom mode, go back into the menu and check whether or not it has been set. So, for example, I'll go into my C1 now, which is bringing up my gray grid, and I think, oh, you know what? Actually, that gray grid should have been a different color. So let's go ahead. Whilst in my custom mode, I go into the menu, cogs, display, D3, grid settings, display color, preset 1, make those changes. We're just going to make it red. Boom, press OK and press OK again. Go back, check. Yeah, that's how I wanted it. So I'm in my C1 menu, shooting menu number 1, reset custom modes, assign to custom mode, C1, which is the one that I'm in. It already says set. Yes, I know because I've already built it. Press right, and when we see the word set, press OK, and that's just locked in that red grid on top. Okay, so hopefully those tips and hints have been helpful. If I haven't answered your question in the comments, I'm really sorry. I will try and go back through on some of the different platforms and pick them up later on as well. So keep an eye out for any replies. Thank you so much for all joining me as well. I really appreciate that as well. One question that's just come up at the bottom is from Stefan Morris, who's saying it's slightly off topic, but is it possible to use Pro Capture with the OI Share app remote? Yes, it absolutely is. If you're using the OI Share app with Pro Capture, you will have to go into the settings for remote control and enable the half press option. And we have a video on the OI Share app as well. So whatever platform you're on, YouTube or Facebook, go back into the videos and look for the one on the OI Share app, and you should be able to see that. Hopefully that would help. Okay, well, like I said, thanks for coming. This has been great. This was our first Tech Tuesday of 2022. There will, of course, be many, many more. And we are going to be doing some new sessions on lenses. So we're going to be focusing on lenses and talking about different types of lenses, what they're good for, what the different specifications and special features of them are. So keep an eye out for those. And of course, my colleagues around the world are also going to be doing their own sessions as well. So look out for everyone else doing their thing. But for now, I do have to say goodbye, but it's not goodbye forever. I'm hopefully going to see you again in a couple of weeks. And if you need any help at all, reach out to us, whether it's for a one-to-one or just some random information. You can come in, send us a direct message on our social media platforms, and we will get back to you and help you out as much as possible. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye and see you on the next one. Take care.